Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends is quite the curious case. As we get into the 2000s cartoons, there's a trend that I've noticed. Shows like Chowder, Flapjack, Puffy Yumi, Class of 3000, they actually weren't too popular back in the day when they were originally airing, and you can notice that by their relatively lower episode counts and less advertising compared to the cartoon classics like Powerpuff Girls, Dexter's Lab, Ed, Edd n Eddy. But in the years since, they've all gotten this groundswell of new popularity, with people fondly reminiscing about them, and the show is eventually finding entirely new audiences. I've seen that a lot, but I've never seen the opposite happen, with one exception. Foster's Home, which I'll be calling it for convenience sake. This was once upon a time like the one good thing on Cartoon Network. I think it was the most popular show they had, second only to maybe Ed, Edd n Eddy. But as time went on and I became a cartoon reviewer, more and more people seem to be openly negative on the show in hindsight. And honestly, it's gotten to the point where I've talked to more people who say they don't like Foster's Home than people who say they do like Foster's Home. The show seems harmless enough from the outset. It's about those childhood imaginary friends that we had and what happens to them when we've grown up and moved on. Taking place in a foster home, get it, it's a pun, for these weird and wacky creatures. And we follow the misadventures of a boy named Mac who is forced to get rid of his imaginary friend Blue. And in order to stop Blue from being adopted, Mac must visit Foster's every single day. The show, in conception, isn't too different than any other media that deals with imaginary friends. The movie that came out recently, IF, is also carrying the same torch. So, what's the problem that people tend to have with Foster's Home? It's one problem in two parts. This show has aged very weirdly. I don't want to say that it aged badly because it didn't. We don't have another time squad here. But let's go into the biggest problem that a lot of people have with the show, and that's the main character, Blue. Blue is an asshole. A huge asshole. This isn't even a criticism, it's just an objective fact of the show overall. He's selfish, he whines, he takes advantage of others, he thinks that he's better than everyone else, he's stupid, and honestly, in terms of personality, he doesn't have too many redeeming qualities. From a cursory viewing of the show, it's hard to see what Mac even sees in him at all. This, of course, does vary depending on the episode. A lot of people point out that in the pilot, Blue is some of this, but is largely restrained. But immediately after that, it's like 9 seasons of Homer developing into a jackass in the span of 2 episodes. That's a bit of an exaggeration. Some episodes, yes, Blue is a selfish jerk and is horrible to everyone around him. Can't Keep a Good Mac Down is the best example of this. As well as I Only Have Surprise for You, but sometimes the point of the episode is him being a jerk-ass and getting punished for being a jerk-ass. And in other episodes entirely, Blue is closer to his debut appearance. Seeing Red, for instance, is completely one-to-one with this pilot showcase. So, let's talk about the character. Personally, I don't hate Blue. Sometimes he goes too far and the episode is terrible, but in general, I don't hate Blue. I don't hate Blue for the same reason that I don't hate Eddie from Ed, Edd n Eddy, for the same reason that I don't hate Rick from Rick and Morty, and for the same reason that I don't hate Jax from Amazing Digital Circus. The show is very aware of who Blue is and what he does, and with few exceptions, he does get consequences for him being a jackass. The most infamous episodes, like Camping and Birthday, are the example of those exceptions. When the Amazing Digital Circus came out and showcased that Jax was an asshole, fan theories were abound that he had some Freudian excuse or there were some hidden depths or whatever, but when future episodes confirmed that, no, he was through and through a jerk, and at present, there's nothing deeper there was a lot of backlash to the show. In the present day, audiences in general don't really seem to tolerate jerk-ass characters. Like, in general, at all. Even when you do them right. Because, in my opinion, Blue is an example of them doing the jerk-ass right. What's the difference between doing it right and wrong? Blue is funny.
Yes, that adorable little Blue one asked me how much that chair was. I told him, then the little darling called me a rip-off artist and kicked me in the shin.
It really is that simple. There is no more complicated answer than that.
Oh, hey, Mac. What's going on?
What? What are you doing?
Driving.
I noticed. Why?
Because I thought it would be fun.
Characters like Blue speak to a certain sense of humor and a certain fantasy. In terms of a jerk character, there should be a sense of catharsis. Most of us do have a darker, sinister side where we've wanted to be this asshole, to say things that would probably get us punched, to be a Blue, to break the rules, tell off those authoritarians, build a water slide in the house. That doesn't mean that we're bad people, but some people do get delight out of, oh man, I can't believe you just said that. And I think that Foster's Home, at its best, tends to be very good at that. And I think it's very good at that because Foster's Home is actually a surprisingly mean show. Like, it's almost at the level of Ed, Edd n Eddy, where 9/10 of the characters were basically sociopaths beating each other up. Blue's antics are much more acceptable in a world where Harriman is constantly breathing down his neck with his overbearing rules that don't make any sense. where Harriman is actively looking for reasons to get people in trouble, in a world where the kindly old lady is pickpocketing a child for plane tickets, repeatedly trying to pull cons on people, where even a character like Wilt, who is defined by his kindness, can pull off a line like this.
You'll be hurting my feelings.
You know, I was thinking about that. And the thing is, I really don't care.
People who talk about Fosters often wonder why the show didn't use Terrence or Duchess more often and resorted to having Bloo cause the problems. I can tell you right now why they didn't, and why those characters gradually disappeared as the show went on. Terrence and Duchess are, simply put, not fun. They are annoying. Terrence is a one-note dimensional older brother bully with no depth or real character, and Duchess is just a bitch. That's literally the beginning and ending of her character. When Bloo is causing problems, it is always interesting. It might not always be good, but it is always interesting. And I can get why this might leave such a bitter taste in people's mouths. The show's style can lure you into this false sense of security. Ed, and Eddie's art style and music is deranged, so you expect the characters to be deranged. Foster's Home is very childish in how it looks and sounds. This, once again, isn't a criticism, it's a statement of fact. It selectively uses outlines, and it relies a lot on simplistic character designs with simple shapes, arranged in wild patterns and a very interesting color palette. It also has a very bouncy background track that seems like it uses a lot of childlike instruments. Bloo himself is basically a Halloween chic ghost, just blue. It kind of makes you think that you're sitting in store for one of those comfy, cozy preschool shows. But here's the thing that you gotta remember. Kids can kinda be sociopaths sometimes. They can be very mean and very callous, saying what's on their mind, doing things on impulse, and not giving a shit about the consequences. Kind of like one Blue-regard Q Kazoo.
Was that Tom Hanks? How did you get him?
Oh, right. I need $3 million more.
What?
It all fits together, usually. Some episodes do go too far, and I'll be really blunt on that. Most shows have bad episodes, but when Foster's has a bad episode, it becomes one of the most insufferable shows that I've ever seen. Everyone Knows It's Bendy is just the tip of the iceberg. Pretty much all of the bad episodes of the show have gone down into legend. Every single one is up there with names like The Splinter, Mysterious Ne'er-Do-Well, Principal and the Pauper. Imposter's Home for, Make 'em Up Pals is an episode that's just there to beat up on Frankie the entire time and hit us with this super insulting ending. Where there's a will, there's a way is just keeping him from watching a basketball game. There is no humor in it. It is a minority of the episodes, I want to be clear, but when one of them comes up, you're going to be in for a half hour of pain and suffering that few other shows can match. Usually, it's because the episode is too mean. Sometimes, it's because cheese or goo exist. Speaking of aging, Cheese was once upon a time this super popular character. I mean, him and Fred Burger from Grim Adventures literally took over Cartoon Network at a point.
I'm a horsey! Whoa! I pooted.
Cheese's character is being stupid and saying that he likes chocolate milk despite being lactose intolerant and screaming. This is the kind of character that a show adds in season 8 when it's out of ideas, steam, and is super desperate. Boy was I surprised when they added him in the middle of season fucking 2. There is no scene that is not made worse with Cheese in it. Awful idea, one of the worst things the Cartoon Network has ever done. And Louise should be brought to the Geneva Convention for creating him because I consider this an attack on the human race. Goo talks and is weird. This is to balance out with Coco, the other primary female character. Coco doesn't really talk, and is weird. Goo's debut episode is her being annoying, making life hell for Max, and everyone trying to get Mac to tell her off. And when Mac finally does tell her off, he's the bad guy. Unlike Cheese, Goo does get better, slightly, but the show as a whole would be much better off without her as well. Same with Jackie Cones. This is a secondary character who gets so much screen time in later seasons because someone in the writer's room thought that he was a better character than he actually was. He's an asshole who likes sandwiches. That's his thing. That's it. That's all he is. Now, I said that there were 2 reasons that the show is aged weirdly and people today might not like it. This is gonna sound very hypocritical, but I don't know how else to put this. People take cartoons too seriously these days to really enjoy Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Yeah, me saying that. Pause for laughter here. Let me explain. to some extent, you will have to turn off your critical, logical brain to enjoy Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Because if you question the premise, even slightly, and you probably will in this day and age when we're demanding lore and history out of even our preschool shows like Bluey, you're gonna have a problem here. The most famous meme of the show is Terrence creating an imaginary friend, a sentient creature, and then just fucking eating him. And the funny thing is, this isn't the only time the show does that. There's a bunch of imaginary food friends that were created specifically to be eaten that were rescued just in time. The people who adopt imaginary friends are considered to be their legal owners. That's the literal word the show uses repeatedly. Bloo literally belongs to Mac. And in many episodes, we do see the imaginary friends treated like really badly. One episode is about the imaginary friends getting sold into servitude. Some episodes show that the imaginary friends are very literally legally discriminated against, and their legal rights are above or below pets, depending on the episode. I'm not saying this show has unfortunate implications. I'm saying that it's dollars to donuts. You will probably think harder about the show's premise than the creators did. In the best case scenarios, this is a ton of fuel for fanfiction as you're trying to answer the many questions the show leaves behind. The worst case scenario, you will find the show fucking horrifying, because literal children are bringing sentient creatures into the world with barely any effort, and some of them are literally superheroes and monsters. And some of these creatures are born to die. Some of them are born to kill. And some of them are like literally as powerful as God. If there is any children's media property on Earth that would make sense to be reinterpreted as an edgelord horror story, it ain't Winnie the Pooh or Mickey Mouse, it's Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Apparently Craig McCracken did want like development for the characters at the time, but Western animation wasn't quite at that point yet, and as such, with what little the show does establish, it's just not very consistent. Like, in the pilot, Mac's mother says that Bloo is the reason that he's being picked on, and yet in every single other episode, all of the kids just really love Bloo. Chances are, if you're watching an animation review channel, you will probably have a problem with this at some point. For the most part, I personally was able to put this on the back burner and just enjoy the show, but one episode towards the end really did kind of harpoon me. Read 'em and Weep is probably my least favorite episode of the entire show. In this episode, a bunch of imaginary friends get adopted, and because they do, their life is hell. And they all return to Foster's at the end, saying the outside is bad and they never want to leave Foster's ever again.
Had to escape the horrors of the outside world. Couldn't take it anymore. And save the others and brought us all back to Foster's.
Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. The foster home where all the characters want to be adopted to loving families. This is literally the premise of the show that they're harpooning.
Jack is messed up big this time, y'all. Don't think I'll be laying eyes on any of you again. Consider this the last will and testament of Jackie Cone.
And the premise is used in so many other episodes as an emotional weight. At its worst, Foster's Home doesn't really seem to get its own premise. In one episode, we have this professional imaginary friend's Uncle Pocket. His shtick is that he's perfect and he gets adopted over and over again. Throughout the episode, he's claiming that he doesn't miss any of the kids he was with, and finds it just super easy to move on. Which is a lie. He's lying to everyone because caring about the kids makes him seem weaker or something. Like, until the end of the episode, I thought he was a cold, heartless douchebag. It seems a little bit backwards, doesn't it? The premise can be as fragile as one of Coco's eggs. Handle it with care. I'm not saying don't take the show seriously. I'm saying the more seriously you take the show's premise, the less you're gonna like the show. When you're watching Foster's Home, go in with the SpongeBob Chowder mindset. I don't usually state this for this kind of show, but I do feel like it's a bit of an obligation here, because unlike a lot of those bizarre, weirder shows that don't have much of a continual premise, Foster's Home at least looks like it's gonna be a show with lore and world building and history, when it doesn't really give a shit about any of those except on super special, ultra rare occasions. Which I actively know is a problem for a lot of animation audiences these days. People want their lore and their history and their solid world building foundation nowadays. This is what I mean by Foster's Home has aged. It doesn't mean that it's backwards in its values, it means that the show is catered to a taste for a different time. A taste that is much scarcer the present day. If there is anything that actually did age poorly though, it's Mac's crush on Frankie. The precocious crush thing is something that's common in many cartoons, and it's usually nothing worse than awkward. You know, the adult might find it cute, but they don't reciprocate. And that's how it is here, usually. This comes up a few episodes, but it does make one episode in particular far more awkward than the writers intended. Ticket to Rod. It's about movie tickets to this premiere movie by this big celebrity. The plot's not very important. It's about competing for the MacGuffin episode. What's important is that Mac wants to go to the movies with Frankie, and Frankie herself is calling it a date, and she dresses up all fancy for the movie theater. And, no, Frankie, that's wrong. We don't do that. Don't do that. Yes, I know it's a big, fancy public premiere. Don't do that. Don't call it a date. Even jokingly or not seriously, don't do that. It's fucking gross. So, beyond all of that awkwardness, what is so great about the show? I'll say it again. Foster's Home is funny.
Hey, Blue. Ready to go to the ice charades?
Who are you?
Who are you and what have you done with my friend?
When Foster's is on point, it is just really some classic television. The best episodes have this formula where they start out with a simple premise, but due to the shenanigans of the characters, the episodes just keep spiraling and getting absolutely ridiculous. This is especially true in the first half of the series. Like, one episode is about Eduardo trying to hide dogs from Mr. Harriman, and this requires him to take the blame for all kinds of ridiculous shit, including shit.
What is that horrible smell? Is that... No, it's not!
Well, Ed, if a dog didn't do it, who did?
And the funniest part is that after this, no one ever brings it up again. Like, this is just something that people do in the house. Crime After Crime is about Harriman trying to nix his carrot addiction, and it ends with the police trying to arrest him for stealing diamonds. I'd also be ashamed if I didn't mention the episode Worldwide Wabbit. This is an episode where someone uploads an embarrassing video of someone on the internet, and we get all of these gags with making parody edits and stuff like that. It'd be innocuous, except the fact this episode predates YouTube. It came out before this website that you're watching this video on, and it's just so forward-thinking. However, whether you like the show or hate it, there seems to be one thing that everyone agrees on. The two episodes you should see are the TV movies, Good Will Hunting and Destination Imagination. Both of them are the show at its best. Good Will Hunting is incredibly emotional, and it delves into the backstories of some of these characters. Like, because of how the show works, you can imagine that Wilt was designed as is with a stubby arm and bent eye. But actually, no, that's not how he was imagined, and he's actually been disabled this entire time. Destination Imagination was the finale of the show in production order, if not airing order, and it is a great send-off, especially for this line here.
Oh heavens, what's happening?
You picked him up! That's what's happening!
I didn't even need the subtitles to hear what I heard the first time.
But he's gonna be pissed!
Imagination Destination is so much of a better finale than Goodbye to Blue, by the way. I can't believe that I ever did an admirable animation on that episode. Goodbye to Blue is just such a piece of shit. The entire last episode is based on a lie. Like, even in the title, we don't say goodbye to Blue. Well, we do because it's the last episode of the show, but Mac don't. So much of the episode is just them saying, we've done it all and we're kinda out of ideas. Which much of the 6th season in general proved on the face of it. I liked the internet video when it was groundbreaking a lot more than I did seeing it a second time. But the reason I really don't like Goodbye to Blue is because it fails on a narrative through line. I know what I said about the continuity and the lore and blah blah blah. A finale is different, you don't get that excuse. A finale needs to be structural. Good Will Hunting basically establishes that imaginary friends are created for one purpose, and they come to serve another purpose later on. Eduardo was created to defend his creator, and then later on taught her to stand up for herself and others. One of the things that people often say about Fosters is that they have no idea why Mac created Blue in the first place. They're so different. Mac is the straight man and concerned with doing what's right, while Blue is a jackass who usually only cares by himself. Speaking personally, I can see exactly why Mac would have created Blue. Blue is loved by all of his classmates. He helps defend Mac against Terrence. Blue probably, in a way, helps Mac feel a lot better than himself. Mac is morally superior to Blue, objectively. Mac has this cool friend that everyone likes that defends him from his brother, and Mac can feel good about his morals and his conscience with Blue around. But at some point, Mac should probably realize the thing the audience seemed to have realized. Blue is not a good friend. I'm not saying that Mac should have given Blue up entirely, but maybe just given Blue an ultimatum. Realizing that Mac doesn't need Blue as a crutch and basically telling him to shape up or it's over. There's a fine line between loyalty and dependence, and I think that Mac is clearly on the dependent side of things. The finale also fails to do another thing, and this is why I hate Read 'em and Weep so much. In that episode, Eduardo gets adopted. This is one of the main characters, but it's so late in the series that you could actually believe that it's going to actually break status quo. Why do none of the other characters get adopted at the end? They all want to. That's the premise of the show. And wouldn't it be a perfect thing to throw in the finale? You know you're not going to get any more episodes. This was designed to be the end. There is one aspect of the show's concept and inception that does bother me on this thematic level. And that's how much the thesis seems to become not moving on. I could imagine a much smarter finale where we fast forward to Bloo still being at the house as Ed, Wilt, Coco, and maybe even Duchess all move out and move on. And we get a real analysis of those feelings and what it actually means for these characters. The show is not below doing something like that, as Good Wilt Hunting proves. It can tap into these emotions. But to be fair, maybe this is me wanting fanfiction a little bit too much again. I still like Foster's despite all of its faults. If it wasn't for those faults, it might be one of my favorites, but I can't ignore its shortcomings. Even taking into account when the show came out and accepting it on its own terms, I can't accept goo and I can't accept cheese. Season 6 was really fucking mediocre, and the bad episodes are still really fucking bad. The only way they could have gotten worse is by having Grossat in it, but even taking all of that into account, I'd still call Foster's Home like a B-tier show. And on rewatch, that'll only get better because I never have to watch the bad parts ever again. Ain't that like nostalgia for you? Only looking back at the good parts.
TV! TV! Television tastes funny. I'm on a commercial. My commercial. My commercial. My commercial. My commercial.